Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a BookTube tradition of a kind. I have been visited by yet another BookTuber, Becky Ford. I'll leave a link to her channel down below. Visited Boston, and of course, when you visit Boston, one of the aging, decrepit old landmarks you have to see is me. So we met for lunch, and then today we met at the Brattle Bookshop. It was a slightly subdued Brattle Bookshop because it was threatening rain, so the outdoor sale carts were not mostly open. The ones that are on wheels in the middle of the cart were tarped over. The $3 and $5 books on the walls were still open for browsing, and we did. And of course, there's the inside of the store, which is just full of stuff. So it wasn't quite the full flower of the Brattle when it's a bright sunny day and all the carts are out. But I've been looking at the meteorological data, and it looks like Boston is not going to have any more bright sunny days ever. So I'm cold, dark, low skies, sleeting rain is forecast for the foreseeable future. So taking guests to the full realization of the outdoor Brattle carts is probably a thing of the past. We still had fun. And then I had to hurry back because in addition to a BookTube tradition, I also had what appears to be a new Steve tradition of a fleet of ninja deadlines just sort of springing up on me out of nowhere so that I don't even have a chance to parcel them out and ponder on them and anything like that. The lucky thing that I'm not a pondering writer, or I'd be lost. But so I had to duck out, and I have to get to work. I have to split the rest of the next 24 hours between my little puppy and a bunch of work to do. But before I do that, I wanted to show you the books I got at the Brattle, because of course I couldn't not do that. And the first one's a perfect example of a dictum that I have learned over the decades. I have been shopping at the Brattle for a very, very, very long time. And over those decades, I have learned to just trust that the Brattle will provide. That's a motto of mine in dealing with them. In other words, if you come across a lack in your bookish life of any kind, subject, specific book, whatever, the Brattle has such a high turnover of stock. They are so constantly buying that sooner or later, probably sooner rather than later, they will provide. They will supply that lack. And just yesterday, I was doing an impromptu bookshelf tour, and I was talking about Lewis's biography of Edith Wharton. And I was mentioning that I don't have a copy of Hermione Lee's biography of Edith Wharton, even though it's not identical to Lewis's, and it's really, really good. And here it is. So this is the trade paperback, a nice fist-sized little trade paperback. I didn't see the hardcover, but this was dirt cheap, so I don't mind. So there you go. The Brattle will provide. I will put this. I know already that this is great. Next time I'm in the mood to read up on Edith Wharton, maybe when there's a new biography or a new critical study of some kind, I will now have both the books I need. The only other one that I could even conceivably want would be a very nice little, elegant little, I wouldn't even call it a full-dress biography, more like a literary meditation by Louis Auchincloss on Edith Wharton. That will turn up too, but if you get a new biography, a new 1,000-page biography of Edith Wharton, or a new critical study of her at the front, or her charitable works, or her domestic woes or whatnot, what you want to do in a case like that, if you're me, is check what that writer is claiming against other writers. And now I have the two that I need to do that. Don't matter, it'll be a pressing need. I'd also like to reread this. I've never read it in trade paperback, for instance. I read the advance copy, and then I read the hardcover, and then I reviewed it, and somehow got rid of the hardcover. I don't know why. I knew already it was a classic. But such is the way. And then the next one I want to show you is also a biographical classic. If anything, it's on an even higher order of magnitude of brilliance than Hermione Lee's Edith Wharton biography. This is a classic, not only a biography of its subject, but just of the art in general. This is Shelley, The Pursuit by Richard Holmes. And this is a big, oversized New York Review of Books trade paperback. The New York Review of Books, they have a whole, see, this is their colophon there. They have a whole series of paperback reprints of all sorts of things. I didn't know they did this. And I certainly didn't know they did oversized books like this. I tend to have my reservations about the quality of their paperbacks, but this one is really solid. So I will just reinforce it and use it, because in addition to being right there at the Brattle today, and I don't have this, and that's a shocking omission. This is a biography you should have even if you're not particularly interested in the romantics. It's just a great exponent of the genre. But I also like this version better than I would like the dust jacketed hardcover that I remember, or the maybe a UK trade paperback if I ever encounter one. But this will do just fine. It's nice and solid, especially when I reinforce it. Then the next one I want to show you is a hardcover of an edition that I had in paperback here in the room, and it's in that bookcase that is entirely full of my own profession, the craft of letters, the book reviews, collected book essays, that sort of thing. I have a whole bookshelf, a whole bookcase, entirely devoted to books of that kind. And the metric that I use to determine whether or not I want to get one of those books in hardcover, if I have it in paperback only, is the only one you should ever use. How often do I pull that paperback off the shelf? How battered is that paperback? And if I have a paperback on that, I consult that shelf all the time. I consult it all the time to find out what my betters have talked about in the terms of what I'm reviewing. And if there's a book on that shelf that is battered and dog-eared and spine-broken and whatnot, then it is time to replace it with a hardcover that will stand the strain of what is obviously going to be a lifetime of use. And so gradually I am swapping out the paperbacks on that shelf for hardcovers, and I found one today. This is Passions of the Mind by the novelist A.S. Byatt. This is all of her collected essays and reviews up until the point when this came out. This, I think, was in the 80s, or the late 80s. 91. This was 1991. So up until that point, this is just a ton of great meditations on everything under the sun, from George Eliot to Georgette Heyer, to a great essay on Barbara Pym that is the darling of Sean the Bookmaniac's High. This is just a wonderful collection of essays. And now I have a hardcover that will stand the strain of frequent use, and I can retire the paperback. Then I found two big fat history books, big fat survey history books. I confess I look at big fat survey history volumes with a wary eye, because they can too often be just dry mechanical trots of a type that I don't, you know how to hear this. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I don't need such books anymore. I don't, as much as I appreciate the work that, for instance, the big library of Will and Ariel Durant did, all those, that multi-volume history of human civilization that they did, much as I appreciate that, I don't need those volumes anymore. Because I now know the overview that they are presenting. I know the overview that most big fat synthesis volumes of history are presenting, and now I'm interested in the specifics. I want to pin down specific people, specific events, specific trends, specific battles. So usually the big fat history panoramas sort of leave me by. I pay attention to them. I read them when they come out, because it's kind of my job. But I tend not to keep them, and as a result, I tend to get rid of ones that then stick in my mind, because the one thing that, for me, that will save a volume like that is if it's it brings something else to the table other than just the latest scholarship and a broad panorama. The writer has to be funny, or dry, or mournful, or eloquent in some exceptional way. And I found two volumes that I got rid of at one point or another that both fit that bill. And I don't know why I keep, well, I think I do know. Part of the reason why I keep getting rid of these is because if somebody asks me for a book that's a good place to start, that's what these things are for. They're a big comprehensive overview of a certain stretch of history, in this case American history. So they're the perfect thing to just box up and send to somebody. But I want them myself as well. I found the first one is from the Oxford History of the United States, a great series, has tons of great volumes in it. And this one, I believe, won the Pulitzer Prize. This is What Hath God Wrought by Daniel Walker Howe. Big fat thing. American history from 1815 to 1848. So from Andrew Jackson's victory at New Orleans to the very beginnings of the realization on the part of everyone in the country that the central problem of this book, of the years covered by this book, slavery, was not going to go away without a fight. By 1848, it was starting to dawn on pretty much everyone that there was no way to legislate this away. And that's the story in this book. This is the story of John Quincy Adams. It's the story of Andrew Jackson. It's the story of those turbulent years. And it is amazingly done. It's amazingly done. Amazingly well written. Amazingly comprehensive. And amazingly insightful. A gigantic cast of characters walks on and off stage in this book. And this author is engaging about all of them, including the Marquis too, who are in their completely different ways very difficult to capture in the written word. Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams are elusive. They provoke the worst. They tend to provoke the worst in their biographers because they are so multifaceted. One, in my opinion, in an evil way, and one in a good way. But that just might be my Jesuitical way of looking at things. One way or another, this is a volume that I want to keep. I wrote a review of it, and I have thought about it ever since, so I was glad to find it. And I'll just have to hope that I hold on to it. And the next one is the same way. The next one was another, it's the same thing. It's a sweep of American history, this time from 1788, immediately after, it's the immediate wake of the Revolution, to 1800. So a much smaller stretch of time, but even more pivotal for the establishing of the country as a nation. And this is The Great Upheaval by Jay Winnick. Another great big fat thing. And these two were together, and they were both dirt cheap, and they are exactly the kind, they're both elevated by eloquence and wit and insight and discernment in what to include and what not to. And they were right together, so I grabbed them both. And I'm hoping that I hold on to them because they're well worth it. Both of them are. And then I finished up with some larger things, some slightly oversized things, which I may or may not keep. One of them I will certainly keep. But the first one is this. It is by Jasper Ridley, an old school... Well, he was an award-winning historian, a serious award-winning historian, but then he realized that if you set yourself up that way, if you win a major award, publishers will come to you. The BBC will come to you. Jobs will come your way, provided you are not off in an ivory tower ponderously working on your next magnum opus. In other words, if you become something of a hack, you'll never want for work. And as a result, I don't really know what to say about a lot of Jasper Ridley's written a whole bookcase full of books. I don't really know what to say about a lot of them. They read very easily. They read very dashed off. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. In other words, I would very much recommend his books to somebody who was looking to start out reading British history. But I would almost never consult them myself if I were, for instance, working up a review of something, or just chasing down the details of one particular item or not. And this thing is something that I don't think I've ever seen. It's the Tudor Age. It's an oversized paperback that's just crammed with illustrations, just full of them on every page. And that's great. I don't know what this will be like. Jasper Ridley is never a boring writer. So even if in the Tudor Age he tells me nothing that I don't already know, which... when it comes to the Tudors, that's extremely likely. It's extremely unlikely that I will encounter anything in this book that I don't already know. In fact, it's extremely likely, depending on the speed with which he wrote it and how much help he had, that I will stub my toe on minor errors in the course of the book. That often happens in big, very pictorial overviews of the Tudor era or the Stuart era for me. But I get them anyway, and this was almost free. It was dirt cheap, so I grabbed it because it might have surprises. It might have lots of fun. Every once in a while, you'll find that where an author is commissioned to do this kind of a job and just decides to have fun, and they're so interesting when that happens. So, and the next one is also British history. This is by Michelle Brown. I don't really know what this is. It must commemorate some actual event, maybe the coronation. Actually, when was this made? Oh no, it's not the coronation. 1983. Okay, 1983. So that could be Princess Diana. That could be something like that. Well, anyway, this could easily be a commemorative, something that was flushed out of a publisher's backlist by the royal wedding, Charles and Diana. But anyway, this is Michelle Brown, and this is Ritual of Royalty. Just, again, a big, lavishly illustrated book on the nature of, it looks like 20th century British royalty. So, with a picture of the embodiment of 20th century British royalty on the back, the Queen Mother, greeting her adoring fans. I don't know what I'm encountering here. I don't think I've ever read anything by Michelle Brown, and I don't know what this really is. I think this will probably be just a very extended history of the House of Windsor. But that's fine by me. I've never read it, and I'm going to gobble it right up. And then the next oversized thing and the last thing from this Brattle trip, it was a Brattle trip in the rain. I don't know when I will be to the Brattle when it's sunny again. But this is a classic. This is by Halling, and this is Paddle to the Sea. His children's book about a little boy who carves a little wooden man, a little wooden toy on Lake Superior. And the book follows the toy. He puts it in the water, and the book follows the toy all the way to the ocean. Through all kinds of travails and locks and lakes and dams and wild animals and storms, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. I'm sure that a lot of you already know this book. It is a certified children's classic. And I have a copy of this, of my own, out in the other room. But when I saw this, I thought, I volunteer time at a pediatric intensive care ward here in Boston, and I'm coming up on my next visit, and I don't think that I've ever read this to the kids, and I'm wondering, I'm confident that it will have the same magic effect that it's always had. I don't think I've ever read this with this batch of kids before. I don't think I've ever even mentioned it, and I'm pretty sure that the group of kids that I will be sitting with don't know anything about American geography, about American topography. I'm pretty sure that they don't know anything about the Great Lakes or anything like the St. Lawrence Seaway or anything like that. So I'll read them the story of Paddle to the Sea, but I will also we'll be able to talk about it. That I have a suspicion that this book has been an occasion to do that for readers for a century. Not just to read the fun of Paddle to the Sea, but also then to expand by talking about geography and topography with kids now that they're interested in it. We'll see if that works. I have a bunch of things I want to bring next time, and I'm just going to add this to the pile. And I will also check in my collection of kids' books to make sure that I do still have a copy, because if I don't, then I'm going to add this to my collection, and I'll just bring something else to the kids. I want to own this. I do periodically love rereading this. I will reread it today. So that is it. That was my my rainy day Brattle trip. I have Paddle to the Sea. We'll do a little Steve pile here. The Tudor Age by Jasper Ridley. Ritual of Royalty by Michelle Brown. Then two great survey volumes of American history. The Great Upheaval and What Hath God Wrought. Then Passions of the Mind by A.S. Byatt, her paid deadline work. Shelley the Pursuit by Richard Holmes, a great biography and the greatest Shelley biography. And speaking of great biographies, Hermione Lee's biography of Edith Wharton, which I no sooner complained about yesterday than I found it today. So that's nice. And that's it. That was my Brattle visit with Becky. And she'll be going back home, and she'll resume making videos of her own. And I just want to take the opportunity to invite you all to just feel free. Hit me up in the comments field. Let me know if you're coming to Boston, and we'll meet, and we'll have some fun, even in the pouring rain. You can at least come over here and have a calzone and meet little Frida. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. That was my my latest Brattle haul, and I'll leave links down below to any of these things that I've written about. I've written about a couple of them, I think. And I'll be back. So I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.